Hi students. I'm going to read the science for this week, pages 65, 66, and 67. So follow along in your packets as I read it aloud. The vocabulary and questions are due at the end of the week again. If you attend the Zoom session, we can go through the questions and the answers because it could be a little bit more challenging this week and there's a lot of questions there. So we can go over those together if you attend one of the Zoom meetings that I assign. Also, maybe I can find a couple of videos to post to my page to kind of help support you with this material. All right, so let's read this. Pages 65 first, okay? So follow along. Characteristics. A characteristic is a feature that has different forms. For example, hair color is a characteristic of humans. The different forms or colors, such as brown or red hair, are traits. Mendel studied one characteristic of peas at a time. He used plants that had different traits for each characteristic he studied. One characteristic he studied was flower color. He chose plants that had purple flowers and plants that had white flowers. He also studied other characteristics such as seed shape, pod color, and plant height. Crossing pea plants. Mendel was careful to use true breeding plants in his experiments. By choosing these plants, he would know what to expect if his plants self-pollinated. He decided to find out what would happen if he bred or crossed two plants that had different traits. Look at the diagram there. It's showing pollen, how pollen is transferred. Mendel removed the anthers from a plant that had round seeds. Then he used pollen from a plant that made wrinkled seeds to fertilize the plant that made round seeds. What happened in Mendel's first experiments? Mendel studied 7 different characteristics in his first experiments with peas. He crossed plants that were true breeding for different traits. For example, he crossed plants that had purple flowers with plants that had white flowers. The offspring from such a cross are called first-generation plants. All of the first-generation plants in this cross had purple flowers. What happened to the trait for white flowers? Mendel got similar results for each cross. One trait was always present in the first generation and the other trait seemed to disappear. Mendel called the trait that appeared the dominant trait. He called the other trait the recessive trait. To recede means to go away or back off. To find out what happened to the recessive trait, Mendel did another set of experiments. What happened in Mendel's second experiment? Mendel let the first generation plants self-pollinate. Some of the offspring were white-flowered even though the parent was purple-flowered. The recessive trait for white flowers had reappeared in the second generation. Mendel did the same experiment on plants with 7 different characteristics. Each time, some of the second generation plants had the recessive trait. Ratios in Mendel's experiments. Mendel counted the number of plants that had each trait in the second generation. He hoped that this might help him explain his results. As you can see from the table below, the recessive trait did not show up as often as the dominant trait. Mendel decided to figure out the ratio of dominant traits to recessive traits. A ratio is a relationship between two numbers. It is often written as a fraction. For example, the second generation produced 705 plants with purple flowers and 224 plants with white flowers. Mendel used this formula to calculate the ratios. What did Mendel conclude? Mendel knew that his results could be explained only if each plant had 2 sets of instructions for each characteristic. He concluded that each parent gives 1 set of instructions to the offspring. The dominant set of instructions determines the offspring's traits. All right, so that's those 3 pages. Again, we can go over these questions at the Zoom meeting tomorrow. And let me know if you have any further questions. All right, goodbye.